Yeah, I'm Joe Hebert, CEO of Outcrop Silver, and our company is active in Colombia. Our flagship is the Santa Ana project, and we have a very high-quality silver-gold discovery there. And we just moved it to what we consider to be a substantial next stage of value, which is a maiden resource we were able to put out this week.
Joe, thank you very much for the introduction. Nice to meet you. I know you've done a number of interviews with Matt. This is the first time I've had the chance to get to know you and to get to know the company. It seems as if I've come at a good time. You published your maiden resource a week or so ago. I listened to the interview that you did with Matt back in early January, and you said it was going to, the resource was coming through. It was a bit delayed from last year, and you were working on it in Q1. Was it a real effort to get it across the line? What was the last few months been like for you?
Yeah, I think there was sort of a technical trade-off we made that we probably could have made a better decision on. People will note that there's over 64% of the resource is indicated, but people really at this stage of the project, I believe they want scale. And the best way to demonstrate scale is to do a substantial amount of inferred, particularly for your maiden. That's what Crux Silver did. That's actually what Silvercrest did. So our catch-up probably will be, we're very happy with the indicated values, and now we really need to go for scale with this next surge of drilling and put inferred ounces together.
When you look at inferred resources, what do you feel comfortable as a drill spacing? What's the distance between your pierce points on these structures that you're going to be targeting in your exploration going forwards?
I would say over 70%, 75% of the deposits or the veins are drilled out at 20 meters or less. For inferred, I think we can go as far with the IQP we're working with now. I think we can go out as far as about 50 meters. And then we have what's called an unclassified at about 60 to 80 that holds together well, but is too far away from a drill hole.
When I looked at the resource, I noticed, of course, that it's high grade, and you have put out some spectacular high grade results over a number of meters. But I wasn't, at a first glance, I wasn't sure what the average thickness of the resource is. Can you just remind me of the resource you've got to date? What are you looking at in terms of an average thickness?
Well, that was one requirement for the first resource is there's nothing less than 1 meter as a model and then minima. So on average, it's probably 1.2, 1.3 meters.
I immediately start thinking of kind of mining scenarios and what a development might look like. I don't know what it's like in Colombia, but I normally think of kind of a minimum mining width as about 2.2 meters to get kind of mechanized vehicles in there, possibly even 2.4, which would potentially be twice the thickness. When you look ahead, what do you think of in terms of kind of a mining width? Of course, through the prism of Colombia.
Actually, we used a very precise metric, which is exactly what. The 1 meter Zijin at Barutica is long hole stope in 1 meter veins, 1 meter stopes, and they're doing that at about $69 a ton for mining costs. So we've actually been there. We're seeing what they're doing, how they do it. It is some small equipment. It is all entirely mechanized. It's much like the mechanization of some of the Resu mining. We haven't included any Resu mining, but it's much like some of the equipment sizes that Silvercrest say is using it. But using it, Las Chispas has minimum or has maximum width of 1.3, 1.4 meters.
Interesting, thank you. Can you explain to me what Resu mining is for my benefit and perhaps also for the viewers?
Oh, I'm sorry. Resu mining is simply it's basically more simply called split shooting. So typically, especially if we have very good walls like we do and like Silvercrest does, is they will drill and blow out the waste, use that as working platform if they need it, and then they will take out the ore separately. Just for perspective, is Silvercrest used Resu mining for 24% of their production year to year. You trade some cost for obviously for and labor, but you if it works for you, especially with the good high quality stability, it is a nice trade-off to preserve your grade
because it minimizes dilution.
It minimizes dilution, yeah. Even in there's some other Resu mining in Segovia where they can mine about half a meter vein with about 0.2 meters dilution.
Extraordinary, really extraordinary.
It really is, but they're doing it, and I think we actually that'll be mentioned in the actual 43101.
What are your thoughts about vertical ounces per meter? I mean, obviously when you've got a high grade resource, your vertical ounces per meter is less important than when the grade is low. But if I let's say your grade is 600, it's equivalent roughly to about 4 grams per ton gold, isn't it? Your current resource at the moment, it's just a bit under.
Is that? Yeah, that's 614. 70, yeah, roughly. Well, no, it's better than that, isn't it?
I mean, on a ratio of 80. If you take a ratio of 80, so the gold price at 2,000 and silver price at 25, that's a ratio of 80. And let's say the 640 grams per ton silver equivalent would be. Sorry, hang on. Sorry. No, 6 grams a ton. Sorry, 6 grams a ton.
I like that better.
No, hang on. What am I doing? No, it's 8 grams a ton. I'm sorry. It's my fault. It's 8 grams a ton. My mental arithmetic is out.
Better.
8 grams. Yeah. It's actually it's just under 8 grams a ton. Got it. My fault. Yeah, 64 divided by 8 is 8. Okay, so that's a nice grade. But sorry, coming back to vertical ounces per meter. Your thoughts on that, please?
I would say roughly vertical ounces per meter in an individual chute. They're averaging about, a vein. The vein's averaging 55 to 6,000 million silver equivalent ounces. And the average depth of one of those would be currently right now only about 270 meters. So there's a lot of vertical ounces that we really haven't touched, just based on knowing we have a few of the outlying chutes that are still in mineralization at 310 meters.
So and how far is your resource pulled down in terms of the that's fallen into the resource category?
The resource category.
I mean, how deep have you gone on the veins within your resource?
Oh, I'm sorry. The average is only about 270 meters depth. The resource indicated or inferred basically will go maybe 25 meters deeper than the average depth, and then we have some mineralization that'll go in 2 or 3 chutes. We haven't drilled down to 320 meters, still in mineralization.
Okay, so the plan for this year then is to expand your inferred resources. How are you going to be doing that? Are you going to be taking your known chutes and extending them at depth, or are you targeting other veins where you might get replicate structures at surface? What's the approach?
Yeah, well, drilling deep is slow and expensive, obviously. So I think the actual it only took 7 veins to produce 37.6 million ounces overall, both categories. So what we'll be doing is we'll be opening up the drill spacing and to inferred in almost all cases now. And we want the financing is going to put about net of financing costs and net of G&A is going to put about $4.7 million into the ground. And we want to produce 22 to 24,000 meters with that financing. And we want to see it produce about 1,200 silver equivalent ounces per meter drilled on this round, in comparison to about 650 per ounce meter drilled a project to date.
Okay. How can you justify that step up?
How can we justify the this?
I mean, how can you be confident? How can you be confident that you're going to get more ounces per meter drilled than you did before?
Because basically drilling all that indicated. The one real value of it was to give us an extreme good knowledge of the character of the chutes and their variability, so that we know if we were able to produce on average 650 ounces per meter indicated, roughly speaking, we can open up the pattern. We've had and then drill more numerous targets that we have. We have up to a dozen other targets with kilogram type silver. Is to drill those shallower, only drill enough in quote indicated category to understand the rake in particular of the chutes, and then go to inferred category.
Okay, got it. And tell me about the geology here. I mean, when you talk about the the characteristics and the variability, what are you looking at? What are the kind of the factors that get involved?
Very little post-mineral faulting. At least 3 phases of mesothermal and epithermal combined. One thing that's done for us is essentially everywhere it's rehealed the vein if there was any fracturing. And then what we found is that typically is a fairly consistent northeast rake within the vein, and the veins almost on a regular basis. They show up every 300 or 400 meters along the vein structure, and then in some areas.
Sorry, so just when you talk about a rake, do you mean that there's a plunging chute within the plane of the vein which has got richer and kind of thicker characteristics?
Maybe I should have used plunge. Actually the whole vein has good contouring. The limits to the chute. I'm sorry, the chute. All the chutes have good grade contouring. The limits to them are almost invariably a pinch out of the structure, or the dilation zone. But then the whole chute, they average from 100 meters to 250 meters along strike, and almost all of them will have that consistent northeast plunge to the chute within the plane of the vein. It's as regular as the spacing of the vein. So there's a real periodicity of the actual chutes in exploration, and basically the direction to drill as you go deeper.
And because you mentioned the word mesothermal, which kind of to me indicates that there's quite a lot of vertical continuity on these things, and you seem to have got a structural pattern here. Do you see any grade variation with depth? Do you see any or metallurgical difference between the kind of the gold and the silver ratio?
There may be a barely perceptible ratioing of gold to silver in some places. You'll see some gold, higher gold at higher levels. The metallurgy is almost consistently very, very similar across all the chutes. It's 90% free gold or particulate gold, and then it's 4% coarse electrum, 4% wire silver, and then about 88% is in canthite silver, so it's a very easy and nice flow chart. And like I say, within the 0 to 300 meter that we know of. We've seen very little variability except for gold-silver ratio.
And does that vary with depth, or is it just varies slightly along different shoots?
It varies more along different shoots. I can't ascribe it exactly to depth, except it seems to be if you have a higher gold-silver ratio, you'll typically see it nearer surface.
So higher gold at surface.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So you also just put out some news about a capital raise. You're looking to raise $6 million with a full warrant, and it's open. So if you get more interest than that, you can take it. What was the kind of thought process behind the timing? Was it let's get the resource out, and then once we've got something that you can put on the desk and say, look, this is what we've got, then you do the capital raise? Was that pretty much it?
Yeah, I mean, we felt an obligation to the market to get that resource out before we tried to do any raise, so that people would have their position on the quality of the property and the amount of ounces and what they wanted to see. We didn't want to do a raise before that resource statement was out.
And what was your cash position beforehand? I mean, at the end of the, I guess the quarter is probably the last reported cash position, isn't it?
The last reported cash position, I think, was 1.2, 1.3.
And that corresponded with the end of March or the end of December?
It's in for March.
Good. So you're you want to do 22 to 24,000 meters of drilling. You need the money. What's the reception been like? What have your either existing shareholders or new shareholders said with regard to the marketing so far?
Well, I think it's a mix of you always have some people disgruntled with dilution, even though it's the only way to take a project forward, especially as a junior explorer. But there's a lot of demand. So when I get off the phone, I'm replying to people
because of there's this bullishness around the silver price, because they're concerned about the bank failures in the US, or perhaps something like that.
I'm not sure the cause, except for evidence of the last raise we did. All those people involved are quite happy. So I think we're seeing the return of those people that have, if nothing else, they have faith in the management. Myself directly, and our VP of Exploration, and our executive chair, and then I think it's. I think probably overall it's the second highest grade worldwide in the indicated category at 615 grams. I think the only better project is Las Chispas with that pushes a little bit, or is towards about a little over 1,000 indicated. I think people understand risk and de-risking, and grade certainly is a de-risker. A high indicated category is a certain de-risker of the project, and then management itself is a de-risk of the project. And I think that people find this an interesting investment.
Yeah, absolutely. How much of your shareholder base came in on the last raise? I mean, if you're typically in these kinds of environments, one might expect a lot of support from your existing shareholder base. And when you mentioned the fact that you had some good interest from people who came in on the last raise, can you give me a kind of a rough estimate of what that shareholder block is within your total shares out?
That participated in the last raise. Is that correct? The question?
Yeah.
I would say somewhere in the range of 30%. Yes, maybe. I don't know if you know Eric Sprott. We're hoping he comes in again. He has 14% of the company. Otherwise, high net worth investors is a large percent of the investment base.
In every capital raise, you always hope that you get the support from your existing shareholder base, and then you need to find a few new candidates on top to top up the raise. Actually, the gold price and the silver price are doing well just at the moment. It's been a pretty ho-hum couple of weeks, but it seems as if the precious metals are very much back on the agenda just of this morning. Good. Is it too early to say when you're likely to get that wrapped up? I mean, you presumably want to get it done as quickly as possible so you can get the drills turning.
I don't remember if there's a closing date in the release or not, but I'm going to guess, no more than May 12th or something like that.
You mentioned in your presentation the having a couple of rigs, possibly going 2 to 3 rigs. Do you have that rig availability? Is that something that's not a challenge for you in Colombia?
It's not a challenge because there's a lot of idle rigs in Colombia actually. Since probably going on 4 or 5 years or more, sort of when things started to really quiet down in Colombia. I believe we have 2 rigs on site. We are taking a little bit of a break to sort of reassess the plan and drill strategically with respect to inferred versus indicated. Basically come up with more scale of ounces, and then if we want to turn the drills on, we'll just bring in another rig. It's not very difficult.
What's the terrain like where you're there? Do you have to cut trail and carry the rigs in by hand?
It's all man portable. All the platforms, all the trails, all the retention ponds are built by hand. It wouldn't necessarily have to be that way. There'd be certain areas where we could do roads, but if it's a comparable cost in terms of environmental footprint on the subsistence farms and the attitude of the people of just feeling like we're small and directed and they don't have to worry about the water quality or damage to their farms. It's all man portable and all hand labor.
And do you have to get prior consultation before you start doing exploration drilling? Has the legislation with the new kind of administration changed the way that you go about exploration?
It hasn't changed substantially, although you are seeing a little bit of maneuvering in the courts with some advocates that don't favor mining. But basically, once you get your environmental permit, that is your drill permit. And you have 2 reporting requirements regarding accidental discharge or specific water use to make sure you aren't taking it from some other water owner. And but for example, we've drilled 60,000 meters under this basically one permit.
Internationally, the rhetoric against Colombia is pretty consistently negative. Do you feel that's unfair?
Unfair is a good word for it. Also, not having enough real familiarity with Colombia. I mean, the people that have discoveries, they're all in there for it till the end. We are. Collective Mining is, Aris is, ZGen is. It's it's always a higher level of risk when you towards jurisdiction. But if you've made considerable value for your shareholders and you've got good community support locally, it's still a good place to work. The government is in favor of mining. They've said in several platforms, but they want to make sure it benefits opportunity-starved communities. We're in particular working to do that. And then also they want to be part of the green metals transition economy. Colombia wants to provide silver, copper, nickel to the market, and or part of the distribution chain of other products.
Does silver classify as a critical metal for the energy transition because of its role in solar panels?
Photovoltaics, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, it's becoming more actually in photovoltaics all the time. Yeah.
I seem to recall the Minister of Mines. She was an anti-mining activist, wasn't she? She actually did her PhD in statistics, or the negative statistics around mines. She's a philosopher as well, isn't she? Rather than even a mining person.
Velez, Senora Velez. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that at least for some time after the campaign, the Petro government was still campaigning, but I think they started to find it hard to actually get support for law. So there's been there's been six significant mines permitted in Colombia in the last 5 years or so. Since this administration, Eris got their environmental permit at Marmato, which was no easy task up by itself, and they were able to do that under Petro. Cerro Matoso, the nickel mine, got their operating permit extended 15 years. So you just have to be aware of how to work in Colombia, how to navigate through the hurdles in Colombia, keep your social license in good shape, and for us, it's a good place to be. And one of the reasons investors should look at Colombia would be that I can't go in many places in the world and find a Santa Ana outcropping out of the ground. And it's the same with some of these, major discoveries that are coming forward and will continue to be. It's just a lot of low-hanging fruit.
Well, Joe, thank you very much for the introduction to your company. Good luck with the capital raise in the weeks ahead, and I look forward to seeing results from new veins that you'll be drilling in the months ahead.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, Merlin.